Hello, worthy students, and welcome to today's podcast on the specialty essay, synthesis. All right, before we talk about this specialty essay, let's review some of the stuff we already know about a generic essay. First of all, it comes in 3 parts. All right, let's talk now about a couple of important reminders about body paragraphs. So each of those body paragraphs where you are trying to prove that thing that you've established in your thesis statement has to include each of the following 4 things. First is your topic sentence. We call that your claim. That's basically what you are claiming or arguing in this particular body paragraph that is somehow going to support your overall thesis statement. Next, you have to develop that claim, develop the idea that you establish in your topic sentence. You do that by including evidence. In this case, it's going to come in the form of quotations from texts and analysis. And in this specific type of essay, the analysis will come by way of explaining not only what the quote's saying, but also what it means and how it relates to your overall thesis. Next, you have to involve coherence. Now, we've talked a lot about transitions. These are glue words and phrases that connect each sentence to the sentences before and after it. And then finally, a final sentence where you tie everything that you have claimed, all of your evidence and analysis, you tie it back to the thesis that you are attempting to prove. Our next step is to take a look at the prompt that your teacher has given you and figure out how you're going to respond to that prompt. So, for example, a sample prompt might look something like this. Choose one of the karmic laws from an article entitled Little Known Laws of Karma and argue whether it is a valid or invalid law using evidence from the poem The Road Less Traveled and 2 bullying articles to support your claim. But the prompt, in essence, is asking you to formulate an opinion about an anchor text and then use supporting texts to help prove your argument. All right, so you are obviously asking yourself, how do I accomplish that task? The first thing you need to do is be sure that you have a thorough understanding of your primary or anchor text. A couple of ways that you can do that. Start by activating background knowledge before you read. Think about what you already know about the topic that you're reading about in your anchor text. Next, set a clear purpose for your reading. So the purpose might attend only to the prompt, but I would urge you to create a more authentic purpose in addition. So an authentic purpose might be to answer an actual question that you might have about this overall topic. And then finally, as you are reading, be sure to mark or annotate the text as you read. And the things that you mark will always be dependent upon the purpose you have set for reading. Next, be sure that you understand all of the support texts. And then finally, you want to think about the connections between the texts. All right, let's go back to that original example, and I'm going to flesh out some of the things we've just said. If you want to understand your anchor text, let's take a look at this excerpt from that anchor text. This is karmic law number 12. It's called the Law of Significance and Inspiration. Okay, so that is our text. So what we need to do is establish some background knowledge about karma, establish a purpose for why we would read that anchor text, and then we'd need to annotate the text. So for example, background knowledge might be something like you punch a kid in the face and then somebody walks by you and goes, "Ooh, karma's gonna get you." Later that day, someone comes around the corner and punches you in the face. And the same kid walks past you and goes, "Karmic justice." So that would be a way to access background knowledge, that in that case, the karma that kid was talking about is the fact that you're going to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and it's going to come back to you. If you put something negative out into the universe, that negativity is going to come back to you. So that's what I know already about karma. Then I want to set a purpose for reading. Well, I would go back to my original prompt, read my prompt again, and have a thorough understanding. So I'm going to have to argue whether this law of significance and inspiration, is a valid law. Do I think it has merit? Do I think it is realistic? Okay, so then I'm going to read with that purpose. And while I read, I'm going to annotate or mark, underline, highlight, write in the margins the stuff that's going to help me understand that prompt and what I already know about karma. All right, the next task I have to fulfill is to understand my support texts. So the prompt had mentioned that I have to apply that karmic law to a poem. The poem is The Road Less Traveled. And this is just an excerpt from the last stanza of that poem. And it reads, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And then there's some bullying articles. And this is an excerpt from one of the bullying articles that I may or may not have been given or have had to research. Okay, so there are my two support texts. I would go back again. I would access my background knowledge about this poem or any other poem that might help me understand this poem, and what I know about bullying. Next, I would establish a clear purpose for why I am reading the poem and the bullying articles. And in this case, I may have been bullied, so there may be an authentic purpose for reading about bullying, and I may hope to get some insight into what to do about bullying by reading the poem. So maybe that's kind of the connections I'm looking for. Other connections might be, how does that karmic law that we just read about apply to this poem and to the idea of bullying? And I would highlight or annotate the text to look for key connections. All right, so the next thing is to find connections between the texts. If you have short texts, I urge you to reread all of the texts. If that's not possible, if your anchor text is a 400-page novel, then you obviously can't reread it. In that case, reread your annotations. This is a great reason why it is super important to keep good annotations for your text, because then you can go back and just read those, and it takes you a fraction of the time it would take you to reread the entire text. As you're reading, be sure to underline words that represent ideas that are going to appear in all of your texts, those connective ideas. Next, once you've underlined all of those connective words, ask yourself how those words illuminate the connections between the main ideas of the text. This is helping you to read closely and carefully around the words that authors have chosen that are going to represent their greater ideas. And then finally, you want to form an opinion about these connections and the message that they send to the reader. And this is going to formulate the backbone of your thesis statement. And that brings us to writing a quality thesis statement. So you'll then take all those opinions, all those ideas, and you're going to craft a thesis that needs to do a couple of things. It needs to include the title and the author of your anchor text, and it needs to state your opinion about the text clearly and concisely. Here is a sample thesis based on that aforementioned prompt. Joe Jackson's 12th karmic law from Little Known Laws of Karma sends a valid message that hard work reaps rewards, a message that can be seen in both poetry and current social issues. So let's examine that thesis quickly. First of all, I include the name of the author, I include the title of the anchor text, and then I form an opinion about what I'm going to write about. The opinion is the valid message that, and this is key, you guys, I can't just say, yep, it's a valid message. I have to say what I think the valid message is. Otherwise, my thesis lacks sophistication and it falls into that perilous so what zone. So you want to avoid the so what statement by formulating a clear opinion about what the text is saying. And that's where I say that hard work reaps rewards. And then I have to tie it to the other pieces of the prompt. Specifically, it's a message that can be seen both in poetry and current social issues, namely bullying. So that's how you're going to go about your thesis. And the thesis, you guys don't move to the next step until you're super clear in your thesis about what it is you will be proving in your essay. Once you have that clear thesis, it is time to move forward into body paragraphs. So in your topic sentence, you need to establish the first claim that you will make to support your thesis. So remember, I'm trying to prove that Karmic Law 12 is a valid idea, and so here's how I'm going to go about it. In sample body paragraph 1, topic sentence, I might say this. So this would be the actual topic sentence of my first body paragraph. In order to understand the implications of the 12th karmic law, the reader must first obtain a working understanding of the meaning of the law. And so that body paragraph would then be a strict analysis of the meaning of the 12th karmic law. So I would spend the next 5 to 8 sentences explaining what that excerpt from the 12th karmic law actually means. Now, your body paragraphs need to include development. Establish a context for any quote that you're going to be using that will support your claim. Then you include that quote. Then you explain how that quote supports your claim. That's whatever you established in your topic sentence. We call that analysis. And then you just repeat those steps until you have proven the claim that you establish in your topic sentence of the paragraph. Adequate development usually requires a minimum of 2 quotes per paragraph, sometimes even more. So try not to get lazy, pick one quote and then say, good, I got that done. You just have to really be sure that you follow your sequence of logic until you have thoroughly proven the claim that you've established in your topic sentence. All right, next, the third component of a quality body paragraph is coherence. Here's how you're going to create coherence in your paragraph. Use transitions between sentences to tie each idea to the next. Also, be sure that every sentence is tied directly to the claim you've established in your topic sentence. And then be sure to introduce quotes with your own words. We call that framing the quote, and sometimes I'll call it padding the quote, making sure that you give a smooth entry into the quote for your reader by introducing it with your own words. Try not to panic at the amount of text on this page. I have created a sample body paragraph 2 for that thesis that we established a couple of slides ago. So remember, our thesis was about the fact that karmic law number 12 is a valid representation that hard work will reap rewards, and that one can see that theory working in both poetry and social issues. So the first body paragraph I used was just a strict analysis of the 12th karmic law. This would then be sample body paragraph 2. So let's take a read. Having gained a deeper understanding of the 12th law, the reader can now turn their attention to how this law is illuminated in poetry. All right, there's my topic sentence. So I'm establishing that the claim is that the law is illuminated in poetry. That's my claim, so I have to prove that. In what is arguably his most famous poem, Robert Frost examines how choice can enhance or diminish a life. Right there, I am establishing a context for my quote. I continue to establish that context here where I say, in his poem, aptly titled The Road Not Taken, Frost paints a picture of 2 roads, and now I have introduced with my own words a quote. And here's a quote. 2 roads that, quote, diverged in a wood. 2 simply refers to the line number. Now I have to analyze that quote. In this case, I need to add a little extra information, so I'm going to include a second quote before I begin my analysis. In deciding which path to choose, the narrator explains that, quote, long I stood and looked down one as long as I could. So those are the 2 quotes that I'm now going to have to analyze or explain. This image highlights the idea that people's choices often require deliberate and difficult consideration, as they often lead in different or divergent directions. So taking a look at that statement, I'm now analyzing that quote and basically illuminating the idea that choices require difficult, thoughtful consideration. Now I'm going to use another quote. So I'm going back to establish some context and introduce the quote with my own words. Ultimately, Frost reminds the reader of this importance when he explains that, quote, I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And now I'm going to analyze that quote. This line suggests that certain decisions, in this case a less popular decision, might prove to be the most worthwhile. And now I have to connect those ideas back to my original thesis statement. In connecting this poetic theme with the aforementioned karmic law, one can conclude that the hard work the narrator puts into deciding which road to travel and its ensuing reward serves as the karmic reward of getting, quote, back from something whatever you put into it. And that's the quote from karmic law number 12. So the body paragraphs, as I just indicated, have to include a final sentence. And that final sentence follows this pattern, that after you have fully developed your ideas, you use your final sentence to connect those ideas back to the thesis statement that you are trying to prove. So let's take one more look at that sample final sentence from body paragraph 2. In connecting this poetic theme with the aforementioned karmic law, one can conclude that the hard work the narrator puts into deciding which road to travel and its ensuing rewards serves as the comic reward of getting, quote, back from something, whatever you put into it. So I'm tying back those ideas to my original thesis. Your last step, after you have developed all of your body paragraphs, is to add an intro paragraph and a conclusion paragraph. So hopefully you've learned something important. A helpful tip from me is that soon, very soon, within the next 3 weeks, you guys will be writing an essay for a prompt that is similar to this one. So hopefully you took great notes. Otherwise, you can hit replay, and I will see you guys all in class. Thanks so much.